Hello, hello, Mindy.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, good, good. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so thankful that you said yes to joining me in this conversation, and I can't wait for all of the people that listen to this conversation to take away so many nuggets because I always just love listening to you talk and share because it comes. And those of you listening, you will find out. Mindy speaks like from her heart. So like snuggle up with a blanket or sit next to the fireplace with a cup of coffee because it's always a great conversation. So yeah, but I do want to introduce you to my friend Mindy Van Vleet. So I want to tell you a little bit about her. She is an entrepreneur for over 35 years. Mindy has built successful businesses through the development of superior customer relationships, profitable business partnerships, and a creative approach to marketing endeavors. Because of her well known passion for building long lasting strategic relationships as a connector, which is so true, that would be the word I would use for her, she is known as one who encourages and inspires others. She believes and understands the value of investing in yourself, both professionally and personally, by surrounding yourself with positive, action forward women. So I am so thankful that you are here today, Mindy. So welcome to the Reawakened Mom podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being here. I'm excited for inviting me to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mindy and I have known each other for a little over a year now, actually. She was someone that I was working very closely with when I was becoming managing director of a local polka dot powerhouse chapter. And I really got to know her and got to know her heart and a little bit more about her story as a mom, as an entrepreneur, and why she is so passionate about connecting with women. So I would love if you could just share a little bit, Mindy, about your story, kind of like when you were moving and your business and your entrepreneurial spirit. Where does that come from?
That's interesting. It really comes from the heart. It's of standing true to who I am, who I want to be, um, of service mind, giving, always giving first. I always say when you can show up to give and then be open to receive,
Yeah.
right? It is set your day. There's always something to love about everyone. There's something to acknowledge about every single person you come in contact with. So, yeah, I started out in the beauty industry, building a clientele. And I quickly learned that women just want to feel heard and that they matter.
Mhm.
And they want a safe place to feel accepted, a safe place to share what's in their heart, what are their challenges, what are their struggles. So I became a good listener. I really nothing more than just a good listener, and making it be about every single person that came into my station, into the salon, and when they sat down, their hour was their hour, and it
Yeah.
was how to learn how to listen, really become a good listener.
Yeah, I was driving, I live in Lewis, Delaware, and I was driving yesterday and there's a salon and it's called hair therapy. So like therapy, but the word in the middle, hair. And I was like, that's so true because, and exactly like what you were saying, we want to be heard. And so many times we as women, moms, we feel like we aren't being heard, or if we're surrounded by kids all day, or, your spouse, you love your spouse, but it's not the same as talking to a woman. And so I thought that was so clever because I really feel like when you go get your haircut, it really is like therapy. And for exactly like what you were saying, because you're being heard and you are being such a good listener.
Mhm, mhm. Well, and I did nails, so that's a face to face. That's a touch that you first. So you're building the trust. So trust is really important. Trust when you know that someone's truly listening to you, and you can trust that what you're telling them is going to stay right there. And most of the time, it's that opportunity to just share what's on your mind without feeling judged, right? Never any judgment. And I think that's important. It's really important in a relationship that when you're building relationships, that that person trusts you, but also knows that you're not judging them by
Yeah.
any way.
Yeah. Well, and as a mom, I would love to jump into judgment a little bit because as a mom, it's so easy to judge yourself as a mom. So I'm doing this, or you're comparing to other moms who maybe are doing like the Pinterest stuff or the way that you parent your children, the good mom versus the bad mom. Did you go through that as a mom? Because if you say, okay, you're listening to women and they don't have that judgment, did you go through that yourself where you were judging yourself and you learned to not do that? Or is it still a practice for you?
Number one, I'm going to start. I think social media is our biggest nemesis, right? That are, if you go to social media and it's very easy to put yourself in a comparing place. When I was raising my two girls, my girls are 11 years apart, 11 and a half years apart. So they're from two different marriages. And there was no social media, right? When I raised my oldest daughter, especially, there was no social media. So as far as a lot of stuff, I guess one of my strengths is that I've always been able to be true to myself. And I say lots of self-talks with myself, but the importance of surrounding myself as a mom with like-minded women, with women that were going to support me, that weren't going to compare me. That's something I've never, even as a young girl, I wasn't challenged with comparing myself with anyone else. Now, I would challenge myself to be better, right? I would not really compare myself, but I was always challenging myself to become more successful and to go for the next thing and to be a better person and to say, stop and think about what I'm saying to someone else. That was just something that came naturally for me.
That's awesome.
I'm fortunate, and I thank God every day for that, right? That I had that strength to do those things. And sometimes have been times in my life that I realized my life wasn't going in the direction that I wanted it to go, and I needed to push pause. And there's nothing wrong with pushing pause and redirecting.
Mm-hmm. What does that look like? What do you mean by pushing pause? Are you talking about in your day? Are you talking about relationships? Are you talking about business?
In all of it, right? And sometimes pushing pause, like, what's going on in your mind? What are you telling yourself? Like, and it are those things are when you start telling yourself and letting negativity creep in, is just to say stop, right? Push pause. As far as relationships, it happened in my first marriage. I realized that I was growing and my spouse wasn't growing with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt trapped. I was being judged by him. And it wasn't until my daughter told me, she was that comment that she said, "Mommy, can we just get a new daddy?" And I'm like, stop.
I just got goosebumps. Wow.
Stop. And I had to stop. I thought I was doing all the things, that I was making up for all the things. And it took her to tell me that, to say that I needed to stop. So, sometimes it'll be little things that you just need to go through your day and just say, "Oh, stop. Let me back up here. Let me just pause. Let me be present."
Yeah.
Right.
How old was she when she did that? Because how much courage did that take from her? And she must have gotten that from you, because you are a strong woman. And so for her, I still have chills up and down my legs from that. How old was she when she said that to you?
She
Do
was
you remember?
5.
5.
Yeah,
Wow. Oh
yeah.
my goodness. How courageous, like how strong of her to even, and observant of her to even think that that's even something possible that people can do.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
that was when I just needed just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I'm leading this, that I am, I'm a, I'm leading this genderbread, like living in a genderbread house life, right? And everything is great. And I think I'm making up for the absence of, and it was nothing major, and that's
Yeah.
something I always say. I am very fortunate that I haven't had, um, just many people have a story, and my story is not, I'm not, I guess maybe what I want to say too is that I've never allowed myself to become a victim.
Mm, yeah.
That I've just told myself, opportunities cross our path, circumstances cross our path. Am I going to use this circumstance as something that has happened to me or
Mm,
for me?
yeah.
And I choose every time, again, lots of self-talk, surrounding myself, doing lots of reading, having a very strong faith, but choosing those circumstances as opportunities. And I know that God is putting this in my path as an opportunity, and I'm going to grow from this.
Yeah.
I could have stayed in that relationship and become a victim.
Mhm.
And I needed my daughter to tell me, drop that little thing, and then make me stop in my path and say, you're right. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be a victim.
Yeah. When you say that you were growing, because I have felt that before as well, where and that happens. Like we as women go through so many seasons of life, and as a mom, I believe that there are so I didn't really know this. I thought when I had my kids, this is just the way it is, and like this emotional roller coaster, and your kids and you and your mom, you doing all the things, and that's just how it was. I didn't really realize that there were different seasons that you can go through, seasons when you're growing, seasons when you're plateau, seasons when you're like, you know what, like I need to take some space for myself. And so when you say that even your daughter said, can we get a new dad? And you were growing, what did that growth look like for you? Is that when you were really, doing a lot of personal development? Were you up leveling in your business, like relationships? What was that growth that you were having yourself as a woman and as a mom?
A lot of personal growth, um, growth in my business, and my spouse was insecure about that. Didn't like that. He thought there was a place for a woman, and that was, he had that stereotype, and I
Yeah.
was growing, and we were growing apart. We didn't have the same, just the same vision in life, and the same, want. We just really grew apart, and I was trying to make it all happen as a mom and as a businesswoman, and still stand true to who I was. And it just was that breaking point. It was the breaking point where I said, no,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop. Like, no. And I guess my daughter, by saying that, gave me the permission to say stop, to say no.
Yeah.
Right?
Because you're more important than everything else. Like you, yourself as Mindy, as the person, like if you are, not staying true to you, then you're going to be fragmented in everything else you do as a mom, at that time, as a wife, like as, a businesswoman, in your faith, like nothing will feel right because you know in your heart that you're not being true to yourself. And so her saying that to you is such a gift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to love yourself first for anybody else to love you.
Yeah. So what did it look like when you guys left, or when you got a divorce, or when you moved on? Like was it great? Like were you in personal development? Like did you do a lot more opening up for yourself and rediscovering yourself as being on your own? I'm assuming as a single mom at that point.
Single mom. Funny thing is that I really thought I was like, people were not surprised. Many of the comments were, what took you so long? Like,
Oh,
we're not surprised what took you so long. They could see, others could see the growth in me that I didn't see in myself.
yeah.
Um, and so I just, honestly, I took one day at a time. I'm very much, I love to set goals. Again, like for me, it was, I focused on my business, focused on supporting my daughter, how I was going to make that, what did I need to do to make sure? And there were times, that especially in the beauty industry, wasn't guaranteed a salary or an hourly. I needed to make sure that I didn't spend any money until I had it in my checking account.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was really perseverance, tenacity, and providing. I guess what I didn't want, I'm gonna get choked up here. My dad was a really good role model for me in my life.
Yeah.
And my idea of what a dad is completely different from what my oldest daughter is, right? And when she said that, it made me stop and say, I want her to have a different picture. Like, I didn't want to be that example for her. It's not okay to be treated that way.
Yeah.
And I wanted something different for her. So my goal when I was going through my divorce was to make sure that she felt okay.
Yeah.
Right? That she felt safe. And my goal was always to lead by example. And for her, I did not want to be a victim. I didn't want her to see that side of it. It's
Yeah.
still her dad, still has a relationship with him. Her idea of what dad is completely different than what mine was. But
Mhm.
I wasn't going to set the example for her
Yeah.
and say that is like, that's not how you want to be treated. So as
Yeah.
a husband and as a wife, that's where I led by example. Like, no, that's not okay. That's still your dad. You love him. That's your dad. I never ever said anything, but I set the expectation of what it's like to feel loved, what a
Yeah.
relationship is like, and how to be treated. And first
Yeah.
of all, you have to love yourself.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the word behind you, empower, because you were teaching her at a 5, 6, 7, 8-year old. You're teaching her that like it is okay to stand up for yourself.
Mhm.
Like you're teaching her that. So then as she's getting older, and how old is she now? Do you mind me asking?
Yeah, she's 36.
Okay. So as a 36-year-old, hopefully over the years, she has learned that, wait a second, like I saw my mom do this. Like you can stand up for yourself. Like no one, and I don't know the situation, but like no one deserves to put you down in any relationship. Like you don't deserve to be put in a box. Like you are meant to shine and give the world your gifts. And if someone is trying to like put you in your place or say, oh no, this is the old story, this is how it's supposed to be, this is what a woman does, this is what a mom does, because so many times we have those stories that we are told or we see it growing up. Well, this is how my family did it, so this is how I'm supposed to do it, right? So you showed her that she is allowed, you're giving her that permission to stick up for herself and put herself first over everything else. Because I'm fortunate. I have not been in that situation, but to be able to, I know so many people that stay in a relationship too when it's not right for their kids. And so to be able to, step away, but still be able to give love and support and still empower your daughter, I think is just very powerful. So thank you for sharing all that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now where do we go? No, just kidding. I love it. No, but let's talk about, you are all about empowering women too and supporting yourself with women, because As when so you were, a single mom at that point, you already said you surrounded yourself with so many people. Did you guys stay in the same area? Did you move somewhere different? Like, how did you go into, like, how did you meet your husband now?
So stayed in the same area, and I was very well connected in the area. Our families were friends, so it
Okay.
was important to me. Again, I am so much a no drama person,
Yeah.
right? I think, and I know drama starts with lack of communication. So it was important to me that, again, that my daughter felt safe, that she didn't, it wasn't one against the other. You know what I mean? I just was true to who I was. And I loved her to the best of my ability and supported her without comparing or hate, or not that I didn't feel some of those things, but I
Yeah.
never allowed her to see that.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't bring her into that. So then and I just needed to be myself for a while.
Yeah.
I needed to find myself, to stand in my truth, to feel good about who I was, to know that I was going to be okay. I believe to this day, there's always a way to make a dollar, right? Again, I didn't allow myself to be a victim.
Yeah.
I could have very easily done that,
Yeah.
but tenacity came through,
Yeah.
right? And I wasn't going to be a victim. And then I met my current husband. He was actually a family friend of my sister's, and introduced. And I wasn't really ready to get into a relationship yet.
Mhm.
And he knew that, and he respected me. And I think the biggest part of a successful relationship is respect,
Mhm.
right? Is to respect. He respected me for where I was, and he allowed me to just see my true self, right? And allowed me that time. So and stepping in, I'm going to be quite honest, my daughter was coming first, and I needed to make sure that whole merging, because he had never been married, he didn't have children, and it's very different to step into a ready-made family. And I wanted to make sure that it was going to work, because my daughter was the very most important thing to me,
Yeah.
right? And I wasn't going to, drama is just not something that I allow into my world,
Yeah.
right?
I was going to say, just when you were talking, because I think so many women, I think what you are sharing is also confidence, or building that belief in yourself, because so many times as women, now I'm not speaking for all women, but you think that you need somebody else to help support you, or you can't do it all on your own.
Mhm.
So, if you had been divorced and then jumped right into another relationship because it's like, well, I can't do this on my, I need someone else to help me. And so I think you having that confidence, and that belief in your heart, and needing to know, like, I can do this, I don't need someone else's support or income to be able to survive. I think that's really powerful, because I think so many times we think we have to have somebody else to make our life work, to make the magic happen, and to be able to be like, no, I need to do this on my own. I need to stand up for myself and my daughter, and I need to put myself first, and I'm going to make money wherever I go. I'm going to be okay. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, yeah. To know that, again, don't allow yourself to be a victim.
Yeah.
And know that if you truly, you have to have that strong faith, right? And it'll be okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. So what, how was it different, like, having, because I also, so my husband was married before. So when I came into his life, my bonus sons, my stepson Slater, he was 9 at the time. So maybe it was around the same age that maybe your daughter was not, I'm not sure. And coming from the other side of it, so coming from the person who had never been married, didn't have kids, it is a very tricky situation to come into,
Mhm.
because it is, and then it's like, okay, if you're meeting, the ex, and then, okay, where's your boundary? How do you step in as a parent and as a step parent, I didn't meet my stepson for a long time because again, my husband was like you. He's like, I'm not going to just introduce anybody
Mhm.
to my child. Is that how you felt too? And did you and your now husband like talk about that a lot? That, these are the boundaries that I have like for myself and my daughter, before bringing anyone in. And was it tricky for him too?
He has never said that. I think where I was different was that we dated for 3 years before we got married. We actually lived together for 6 months before we got married. Again, because I wanted to make sure it was going to work,
Yeah.
right? But since he was friends with my brother-in-law, Ricky got to meet him, right? My daughter got to and I observed how he treated her, how they got along. I sat back. I never like tried to fix things and make it all okay, and never, it was never, and this about me, it's not about taking sides at all. So it was never like, oh, I'm taking her side, or I'm taking his side, or, it was just very, I just observed. I allowed them to build a relationship
Yeah.
and to see where that relationship was going to go. And as a mom, I mean, there were times as a mom, that was one thing that I didn't allow myself to become a victim, but I also didn't allow her to manipulate me either.
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
I think, and that's difficult. That is probably the hardest part, is being a parent when you've gone and you've got kids going one way, one way. I was fortunate I didn't do a 50-50 split. I had her during the week, and, just on the weekend she went. But it wasn't, and that's difficult though, because how do you not become that weekend parent, and then how do you not become resentful towards that weekend parent? So again, lots of self talks, lots of surrounding myself and talking with women and friends, and feeling comfortable, and having a very strong faith, but knowing that it was all going to be okay,
Yeah.
knowing that it would trusting that it would be okay, observing, watching them build this relationship, but not wanting him to fill her dad's spot. And you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, and not taking away, that was her dad. That would always be her dad. But Dave became a whole new meaning for what a stepdad is.
Yeah.
Right. And when it came time for her to get married, and I never, when she was planning the wedding, I never said who's going to walk, who are you going to have walk you down the
Right.
aisle. And she came to me and said, Mom, do you think Dave, I want my dad to walk me down the aisle, but I also want Dave to walk me down the aisle. Do you
Oh,
think
wow.
he would do that? And I said, you have to ask him.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing. And I was just going to say on your point, so coming from the other end, so coming in as, the other woman, he had been married before, so, he had a son, and coming into it. And I loved watching him with Slater because that was a preview of how he would be to our children. So it was a big, because I had a lot of expectations, or my stories of my dad, all these amazing things, and how I wanted my husband to be with our family and our kids. And so I was like, I feel like I cheated the test, like I had a preview of how he would be to our kids because of the way that I would see him act with Slater. And so I always said that to him. I'm like, I love, I know he's going to be an amazing dad because I see the way that he is with Slater. And I just thought that was such a great gift too.
Yeah.
Because honestly, people thought that I was crazy going into a relationship with someone. He's 9 years older than me. So going into a relationship with someone that's older, that already has a child, that's been married before. And they were like, why would you do that? And, I always was like, it's not about that. It's not about him having a child. I'm not going to not like him or love him because he's been married and has a child. Like, I'm loving him for the person that he is. And if he's older or younger or has a child or not, like, that's just the way it is. And so I think there's that judgment, those prejudgments that come into those relationships, and people try to talk you in and out of things because of, and of course, people are trying to protect you.
Right.
But I think for me too, being strong enough to be like, that doesn't matter to me.
Right.
It doesn't matter to me that he has tattoo. Like, those
Right.
things don't matter to me. Like, I love the person. And so, it's interesting when you were saying that too, because that's what immediately what it took me to was like, I got a preview
Yep.
of how my husband was going to be with our children.
Absolutely. And it's how, you know what you want, right? You know what you need, you know what you want when you say a preview. I did that with, when I met Dave and he took me to meet his parents, is that I observed the way, number one, his relationship with his mom, but I observed his parents, how they treated each other.
Yeah.
Because I knew that spoke to me. Like, I that felt good to me. It was heartwarming how I saw their relationship, because then I knew that that's what I'm looking for. I'm
Yeah.
looking for that relationship, and I see that they had that, and that's how he was raised. That was, just those good bones.
Yeah. So when you had your daughter with Dave, then, like, was that the way he was? Like, did you
Absolutely.
thought, he was going to be like come true with what you saw, like the way he treated his mom and like his parents were like, it was that he checked
Absolutely.
your list off?
Absolutely. Well, he was so good with Ricky. He was really he was that father figure for her. And so then when we got pregnant with Hannah, his relationship with Ricky and his role with Ricky made him, as a stepdad, just made him an even better dad. Right. It was that. And so, yeah, he's pretty amazing.
That's awesome. And so my siblings and we are very spread out. We're not 11 years apart, but we're pretty close, each of us. How is your daughter's relationships like, being 11 years apart? Like, was your older daughter, was she just like loving the, Hannah when she was born? She's like, it's like a baby doll and I can baby, was it close, or how has that relationship kind of evolved?
It was close. She was like ecstatic when we told her. And again, and her friend, our friend, isn't it funny how when you're raising your kids, your closest friends tend to be your kids' friends, right? And that's what it was with us. We had a really good group of friends and everybody was so excited. So Hannah was just like idolized from the moment before, when she was before she was even born. It was just like, oh, we've got a baby coming. Everybody was so excited. And so she was very she was welcomed and treated. I always said my girls were spoiled but not rotten, right? They didn't smell. They were well loved. Both of my children were very well loved by family and friends. So they and then, as I always did things as a mom to, having two girls be at very different well, I had one graduating high school and one graduating kindergarten on the same day. So like a picture in our front yard, and I always took a picture of the first day of school, and Hannah was always right there, in the picture with Ricky, and for Ricky's all of her, formal events, Hannah was always the little one standing right there next to her sister. So yeah, very different, and they're two very different personalities. And yeah, as I said, the book that I wrote with Ricky, that's completely different book. I had to write a whole new book with Hannah, raising Hannah. And today they're very close. In fact, they are, during the pandemic, Hannah was living down south in California, and went to visit Ricky and ended up staying in Colorado. And she's actually living with her right now. So she's very good. They have a really good relationship. In fact, Hannah's watching Ricky's kids right now while Ricky's and her husband are going on a small little trip. So
That's
yeah, they have a really good relationship.
Yeah. So that has to feel good as a mom to, because
It does feel good, but it doesn't mean that there haven't been things that come up. And when they come to me with these things, I always tell them, go back, communicate with one another. Like, I'm not going to be the middle person. There's a reason for everything, but you guys have to communicate. The drama happens with lack of communication.
Mhm. That's like your hashtag.
It is.
Your
It is my
hashtag all the
hashtag. I believe that. I totally believe that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, I mean, I'm looking at the time because we could be chatting forever. I'm like, oh my goodness. Is there anything that you haven't shared or that you feel like is just great advice for moms, or just something that you really believe in? Obviously, you've talked about like the no drama, the communication, sticking up for yourself and knowing yourself. Communication is key in connecting. But is there anything that you haven't, shared that you think is really important or on your heart?
I think that it's interesting because these two things have come up in my this week. When I was preparing for this, I was like, okay, what is Melissa going to ask me? I wonder what. And it's interesting that I've had both of my girls have come to me and have told me how important it was for them that I was that I was selfless, like that I did things for others always first, and I led by example for them.
Mhm.
It's interesting because I came across a Facebook post that Hannah had put down, and then Ricky the same thing, and it was like being selfless, my selflessness and work ethic. And so when you can lead by example, stand in your truth, right? And lead by example. When you only want the best for everyone else, that's going to shine through in the end. So when you can show up to give, but then don't forget to receive. And I think many times we as women forget to stop, push pause, and receive what people are trying to give us.
Yeah, because a lot of the time we don't want the spotlight on us. We're like, oh my gosh, like this shirt, oh, it's so old. Like, what do you like? Versus just being like, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. I appreciate I'm receiving that. I'm taking that in because we want the spotlight on other people, or we don't want people to look at us, or we don't want people to know, or whatever it is. It's just it like burns your skin where you're like, oh, don't tell me something, don't give me a compliment. And then
Or you've become so resentful,
yeah.
right? You've allowed resentment to come in. And why is that? Like, to stop yourself before that comes into play. That
Mhm.
victim, being the victim and being resentful, comparison, again, social media. Oh my gosh, to me, when you feel that, I kind of walk away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so I know that you were reading a book about the high five habit. And so
Uh,
a question that I love to ask at the end of these conversations, because as women, we do not celebrate ourselves enough. We are giving everybody else the high five. We are, supporting and lifting everyone else up. And sometimes we don't do that for ourselves. And so I would really love to know, and you've shared some things, but what do you love about yourself?
that I'm very heartfelt,
Mhm.
and that I am able to, that I'm a really good listener,
Yeah.
right? That relationship, I don't take relationships, conversations, connections lightly.
Yeah.
I don't just like cross it off. Okay, well, that one's done. I'll move on to the next. Like, I value relationship, true, authentic relationships.
Mhm. And it's so needed. I mean, it is so needed. I think now more than ever is really having, people, and it doesn't have to be 1,000 people or 100 people. I mean, you can have five, you know, 5
Absolutely.
people that you can call on at any time, midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and say, listen, can you talk?
Mhm.
And to be able to have that safe zone where you can be like, this is me, the raw, the real, the ugly, like whatever I'm about to tell you, and you're still gonna love me. It's so important because we can be so hard on ourselves. So to be able to have, a support system is so important.
Right. And to be able to find positivity in everything, opportunity in everything.
Mhm.
It's there. We just have to look in the right direction.
Yeah. Oh, I love this. Hey, people are going to want to find you. They're going to be like, I want to find this heartfelt lady. I need some of that sunshine in my life. Where can people find you, Mindy?
My website, mindyvanvleet.com.
Okay. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for this heartfelt conversation for sure. I hope
Absolutely.
you weren't up late at night wondering what kind of hard questions I was going to ask.
No, absolutely not. You know what? And you know me, I am who I am. I'm authentic, I'm genuine. And I just figured, you know what? What's going to come out? But it really allowed me to reflect as well. Because
Awesome.
we all get caught up in our everyday lives and we kind of just forget, like, where have I come from? What are those things that I have that I love about myself?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that you're passing on that's your legacy. It's your generations of, your daughters and then their kids and then they're teaching their kids. So, it's the legacy that you're leaving too. So it's
Thank
like
you.
you said, sometimes a lot of the time actually, we don't take the time to actually review that when we're reviewing, oh my gosh, like, okay, let me check off all these business things but it's like, wow, let me see what I've done me. Like,
Right.
who am me as a
Right.
person? What have
Right.
I accomplished for myself? So thank you so much. It's such a gift to listen to you and share time with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. See you soon.
Okay. Bye.